Well, here we are today at the Hopkinton Historical Society, and we are going to talk about the history of Woodville. And today our two guests are Gail Plifford and John Palmer. And we're going to start off with Gail, and I think you're really going to be very interested in listening to this. Gail?
Hi Mary, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
We're going to talk about Woodville from the very beginning, which is the 1600s. There is evidence that settlers came in the 1600s, but most of the people were passers through, so to speak. They came on the old Connecticut path, or Bay Path as it's known, on their way to the Connecticut River and ultimately to Hartford. The first settler that we know for sure is John Wood, and he came to Framingham. He married in Framingham in 1705, and then he came to the Woodville area probably about 10 years later, and he built a house, he built a tavern, and he ran a grist mill or a sawmill, and he had bought 300 acres from his father-in-law in the Woodville area, and he had also bought another 200 acres from someone else who had a grant in this area. So John was very important in the setting up of Woodville, of Hopkinton's town government. He was elected second selectman when the town was set up in 1724. And he was also one of the 15 earliest members of the church, and was one of a couple of these members who was able to obtain Samuel Barrett as the first minister of Hopkinton. He actually founded a dynasty. Unknowingly. He died in 1725. What did he know? Mm-hmm. But anyway, his descendants went on to form a village, a really integrated village with residences and businesses. So there was employment, there were farms, there were stores, there was even entertainment and a restaurant or two over the years. The heyday was the 1800s. And so we're going to check that out. And this map here, I'm going to point out on this map exactly where we are located now. This is a road here. This is Wood Street. This is Winter Street. This is Exchange Street. Lake Whitehall is here. And the first dam is here. This is the Upper Mill Pond, which is still there. This is the Lower Mill Pond, which right now is not there. It's simply Whitehall Brook going through the second dam, which is here, into the pond, and then the third dam is down here. Now what this map is it's a listing of almost all of the businesses that were over the years, 3 centuries, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, in Woodville. They're color-coded. Now John is going to talk about the cotton sheeting factory that's up here on the third dam, and then he's going to talk about the Granby and Francis Whalen boot and shoe manufacturer, which was actually on the Upper Mill Pond, and then we'll continue after that.
Thank you, Gail.
So William Wood, I think he was a grandson of John Wood. He started experimenting with the manufacturing of cotton cloth in the very early 1800s. On the lower dam, I'll show you the building in a minute. This went on for a few years, and then about 1811, he transferred his property. First of all, his business was called the Hopkinton Spinning Business. So in 1811, he transferred the spinning company's business, the spinning business, to a new company, as well as the water rights that went with it. And it was a new company called the Hopkinton Cotton Manufacturing Company. It was set up by a group of businessmen, local businessmen, one of which was William Wood himself. They started manufacturing on the Lower Mill, same location, until about 1827. And at that time, a survey was done of the property. The survey was in connection with a transfer of the property. The transfer was from the Hopkinton Cotton Manufacturing Company to William Wood's sons, Granby and Francis W. And, no, excuse me, to his sons Albert and William B. Woods. The survey that was done in 1827 was done by Matthew Metcalf, who did the first survey of the town of Hopkinton. But it's more than just a survey. It's a detailed sketch. This is the factory. It's 3 floors. It's got a garret on top. It's at the end of the Lower Mill Pond. This is the sluiceway that comes in so they can power the machinery. And actually, the writing here is too small to read, but it describes the different machines that were throughout the building. So in 1827, we have the ownership back to the Woods. After that, we lose track of the cotton manufacturing. We don't know how long the business lasted, but there are hints that they produced cotton there during the time of the Civil War. And that's sort of the end of the cotton manufacturing story. But the building, we do know what happened to the building. The building lasted until the 1890s. After the cotton manufacturing, it was used to make manufactured shoe lace, and then it became the home of the Dwight Print Works. This map is a pretty good sketch of the lake, the upper pond, and the lower pond, and we're right back here. If you could read that, it says Dwight Print Works, Lace Factory. It's this building right here. And this was, I think, an 1890s sketch, so it's current. So we leave that, and we do a second business. This is the Granby and Francis W. boot and shoe manufacturer on the upper pond. In 1867, the boys established a boot and shoe company. They had a 4-story factory. It measured 25 feet by 50 feet. In the first year of business, they employed 40 workers, and they produced 1,200 cases of boots and shoes in their first year. Demand took off for boots, particularly boots, so they had to expand. So a few years later, they purchased from their father a mill. It was a stone mill on the other side of the Wood Street on the upper pond. It was really right across the street on the upper mill pond, and they operated there as well. But the shoe business, the boot business particularly, grew rapidly. So they, being industrious, they set out and built themselves a very large boot factory. It was 36 feet by 90 feet. At its peak, that factory employed 175 workers and produced 16,000 cases of boots and shoes a year. I mean, this is a big company. That company continued all the way into the 1890s when something momentous happened in Woodville, which permanently changed Woodville. Gail is going to tell us a little about that in a few minutes.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to talk about another major industry in early Woodville, which was called the Coolidge Carriage Factory, and also the Reservoir House, which was an inn and a restaurant. Now, the Carriage Factory, and here are some pictures. The Carriage Factory was continued on by Phoebe Ann and her husband, Edward Coolidge, because William was getting older and a little more tired. And he also had a tavern there, and they took that over. And when their son, Leroy, came of age, he expanded the business. It wasn't just harnesses anymore, or he started the harnesses and went into carriage making. Carriage making and auctions of horses, and he had livery, and it was a big, huge business. The, take the other picture. The Reservoir House was remodeled several times.
Oh, yes.
And there were 30 guest rooms. There was a spacious billiard room, and the dinners were apparently very widely known. It was advertised in the best of magazines. The dinners cost about $2.50 a piece. Those days are long gone.
A lot of money.
So this business continued very, very well until about, this momentous event that John was talking about happened in the 1890s. And this business was able to continue because before this event, they managed to switch over to steam heat instead of water power from the different dams and water mills and all of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, in 1909, there was a massive fire. Coolidge Carriage Factory lost all but 3 buildings in this fire, and the Reservoir House went right to the ground. So that was the end of that, and actually that is the end of the most major industrial activity in Woodville. But John is going to talk now about a series of companies that grew up on the eastern side of Winter Street, away from the water, and actually sort of still continues today.
So we're going to talk now about, I call it the story of the Farrer Company, but it actually begins in 1890 when the former Woodville Shoe Company owned a factory building on Winter Street. The shoe company closed at some point, and the factory was then occupied by the Preston Hose and Tire Company, and then later by the Stewart Company. The Stewart, which is the well-known Woodville family, they had an existing carriage business elsewhere. They relocated the carriage business to the Winter Street location, and they made carriages there. But then the business evolved into making truck body types. They made truck bodies for many types of trucks. In 1923, Clarence Farrer joined the company. He had just moved to Woodville. He went to work for the Stewarts. 10 years later, he bought the business from the Stewart family. And then he concentrated exclusively on manufacturing truck bodies for fire truck bodies. He became legendary in the business. He was also an active and highly respected citizen. The Farrer Company operated for 40 years and built over 1,000 fire truck bodies throughout New England. He died in 1977. His family ran the business for a few years after that. Then the business was sold to the E.J. Murphy Company. Murphy, when he bought the building, he replaced the old shoe factory within the new modern building that's there today. Murphy continued to make fire trucks there for a few years, and then he sold his business to the current owner, the Bulldog Fire Apparatus Company. It's very amazing that we have one business, a fire truck business that's operated for about a century at 17 Winter Street. I have a photo I would like to show you of the original shoe factory, which was the Farah. This was a shoe factory building. This is when Farah operated from it. So that was there until Murphy's put the new building that's there today.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Gail's turn now.
Okay. Let me sneak in here. Now we're going to talk about that momentous event. Now, to switch over to Lake Whitehall. Lake Whitehall in the very beginning was really 3 small ponds, which were down towards the Pond Street end of Lake Whitehall, the southern end. As the industries came and built up and wanted water power, they put 3 dams on the pond, and it filled in and made a very nice size, I think 600 acres, I think is the total size. About 1846, the city of Boston decided they needed more water for their residents and businesses. So they began what they called the Sudbury Project, which was basically taking all the water of the Sudbury River, backing up to its beginnings over the years. And they would take the water of the river, they would take the water that the tributaries brought into the river, they would take any ponds associated with the river. So in 1890, they came to Lake Whitehall. And in 1890, the city of Boston seized all the water power, the water rights, and everything to do with it. So when you want drinking water, you don't want any pollution in the water. And unfortunately, that meant that a lot of the businesses had to be shut down. So we lost the boot and shoe factory at that time. We lost the last factory, we lost the Dwight Printing, we lost, there was a set of shops, machine shops on Highland Street, and those all had to be shut down too. These are some pictures that were taken in 1897, showing the dam being built, rebuilt over here, and this is one of the houses that had to be moved. And John's going to talk about that particular consequence of the momentous event.
Okay.
So one of the consequences of the takeover was the mandatory removal of 6 houses on Exchange Street and 1 on Winter Street, which is the one that Gail just pointed out. The reason for the removal was the same as Gail mentioned. It's to prevent pollution. It was to prevent pollution of the lake from the nearby outhouses. So all these houses were relocated elsewhere in Woodville, so we didn't lose them. This is a great photo of the water side of Exchange Street. These are the houses that are no longer there. Gone. The city of Boston wanted them out of there. Another thing on Exchange Street that I found interesting was the name of Exchange Street. It comes from a stagecoach horse exchange that was located at that site in earlier, so it was natural to name it Exchange Street. The next thing I'd like to tell you about, Mary, are the summer camps. I'm not sure you know about this, but around the time of the lake takeover, and I'm not sure there was a direct connection, but perhaps, there was a temporary construction boom in summer camps on the shores of Lake Whitehall. There were pockets of camps on Spring and Winter Streets and on Parker's Point. And we have a poster of the camps here. This poster shows the grouping up on Spring Street, the grouping on Winter Street and down here, and then Parker Point is over this area in here. Charles Ward had 12 camps on Spring Street that surrounded a picnic grove called Whitehall Grove. He also rented rowboats, he held clam bakes and bean hole suppers there. The death knell for the camps came in October 1925. Severe storm destroyed over 200 cabins and damaged many more, so they stopped. We have a thank you to the viewers for watching this show. We're going to offer a free 1-year membership in the Hopkinton Historical Society to the first person who knows what a bean hole supper is.
If you know what a bean hole supper is, send us an email and you're going to have free membership. Okay, Gail, it's your turn.
I want to talk about the fact that this wonderful village is actually being preserved today. We have a Woodville Historic District, which was thought about in 2004. A study committee was formed, and in 2005, the town meeting overwhelmingly voted it in 6-1, almost 6-1.
Wonderful.
So we have 90 odd houses in that district. This is Wood Street, Winter Street. It also continues up Fruit Street, up quite a bit on Winter Street actually. And John is going to talk specifically about this house right here, 226 Wood Street, one of the houses built in the 19th century.
Okay, John.
So one of the best preserved houses in Woodville is the one at 226 Wood Street. The house was built around 1870 by Mr. E.J. Coolidge, and he built it for his daughter and son-in-law. His daughter was Ann Jeanette Coolidge, and his son-in-law was Marcus Woods, well-known names. Mr. Coolidge lived in the house until 1893 when he passed. The house is special to me also because it's now the home of my daughter and son-in-law, Suzanne Palmer and David Pillarella. And this is the house. This is the house today, and this was the house many, many years ago. Same house. Nothing's changed.
I think Carol McCarney lives there.
And Carol,
Yes,
I think
yes.
my daughter bought it from the McCarneys.
Very nice, very nice.
Well, I almost forgot to mention our own Mary McLeod did a wonderful watercolor painting many years ago, actually, of Lake Whitehall. And this is taken at the dam where the gatehouse is, essentially standing where the gatehouse is, looking towards the water. You can see the spillway. This is what we referred to earlier as the first dam on Lake Whitehall. And there's a little fishing boat there.
Thank you very much.
Very nice painting.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gail. You're
You're
showing
welcome.
the
You're
beautiful
welcome.
watercolor. I had such fun doing it. I did it with Ann Fairbanks and Carol McCarney in the early 1990s. And we went over and sat, and Carol McCarney said, okay, do what you wish. Paint what you see. And that's what I saw. Beautiful Lake Whitehall, that's for sure. I want to thank you so much, and thank you for watching. And we hope you have enjoyed this history, and we hope to continue in showing you the history of our beautiful town community, Hopkinton. Thank you, John, and thank you, Gail.
My pleasure.
Did you know there are other ways to reduce your pain besides taking medications? For example, mindfulness. I'm Dr. Mike Guidi, a family medicine doctor based in Essex County. I use mindfulness techniques with my own patients during office visits, and I'm here to tell you how you can prevent addiction. It is a way to train your brain to manage pain. Reducing your pain through mindfulness could mean you need less medication or a safer type of medication. It can also help you reduce your stress and recover from past trauma. That means you become less likely to develop an addiction, whether opioids, alcohol, or any other substance. In brain research, we scan people's brains before they start practicing mindfulness, and after they've been practicing it daily for 8 weeks. We see actual changes in the way their brains are wired. We see those people drawing more on their judgment and reasoning skills, resulting in safer behaviors. Massachusetts has great resources about effective mindfulness techniques. To find out more, go to massmed.org.
Together we can change the news. Find out how at safekids.org.
Every year, 30,000 elephants are killed by poachers. 8 million tons of plastic is dumped into the ocean, and 18 million acres of forest disappear. And with them, many of the remarkable animals that share our planet. These animals need our help. Their very survival depends on our ability to protect them. Zoos and aquariums are on the front lines of wildlife conservation and inspire environmental stewardship amongst the millions of families that visit every year. And know that zoos and aquariums that have earned the Humane Certified Seal of Approval from American Humane will not give up until every species has a fighting chance for survival. Find out more and help protect and preserve the amazing creatures that share our world.